Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. More than 2.2 million additional economic impact payments disbursed under the American Rescue Plan. IR 2021-157, July 21st, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service, U.S. Department of the Treasury, and the Bureau of Fiscal Service announced today they have disbursed more than 2.2 million additional economic impact payments under the American Rescue Plan. Today's announcement, covering the most recent 6 weeks of the effort, brings the total disbursed so far under the American Rescue Plan to more than 171 million payments. They represent a total value of more than $400 billion since these payments began rolling out to Americans in batches on March 12th. There's a link to March 12th here if you want to get some more detail about that rollout. Here is additional information on the last 6 weeks of payments, which includes those with official payment dates through July 21st. So here's the latest kind of batch information for these latest payments that have gone out in total. This includes about 2.2 million payments with a value of more than $4 billion. About 1.3 million payments with a value of approximately $2.6 billion went to eligible individuals for whom the IRS previously did not have information to issue an economic impact payment, but who recently filed a tax return. So they're still picking up people that basically, they didn't have their information before, and they picked up their information and are able to send out the economic impact payments. So if you still have not, or if you know people that have not received economic impact payments, round 1, 2, or 3, although they're kind of different in the nature as to when they went out, 1 and 2 being tied to the prior year tax return, the 2020 tax return, now kind of linked to what would be called the recovery rebate credit, because when you file the tax return, if you had not received it, you should be able to reconcile that with the recovery rebate credit. The last one is kind of tied to 2021 taxes, so it's still kind of considered an economic impact payment, and it is tied to the 2021 taxes, which if you don't receive it all the way till the end, when you file the tax returns in April 15th or by April 15th of 2022, you would think you would have the recovery rebate situation at that point as well. So note that if you haven't received the economic impact payments, your options are, if you need to file a tax return, then you want to file the tax return, meaning if you had not filed the tax return, but you're supposed to file the tax return because your income is over the threshold to do so, then you generally want to file the tax return. If you're not required to file the tax return, then you have an option of saying, do I still want to file the tax return, or possibly I can use another tool, the informational tool, to just provide the IRS the basic information. It's often still useful to file the tax return, and it doesn't really cost anything except a little bit of added time to do that for most people whose income is below a certain threshold, because you have access to free software, and you possibly can get access to earned income tax credit, which is another big refundable type of credit that is not usually there if you give the basic tool, the basic information tool. If you then decide not to file a tax return, you want to just give them the basic information, then you can file basically the basic kind of information tool. So if you still know people that haven't received their economic impact payments and maybe qualify for the CTC child tax credit and advanced child tax credit, then you might want to, give them that information, the free software, irs.gov, irs.gov, to kind of look at that in more detail. This includes additional ongoing supplemental payments for people who earlier this year received payments based on their 2019 tax returns, but are eligible for a new or larger payment based on their recently processed 2020 tax return. In the last 6 weeks, there were more than 900,000 of these, quote, plus up, end quote, payments with a value of more than $1.6 billion. So these are the kind of tax returns where basically they didn't have 2020 information because people hadn't filed 2020 yet. The extension date is still out there, so it might be some people that haven't filed the 2020 tax return, but they had filed 2019, noting that the 2019 income may have been higher than 2020, since that was before the whole issue that was being taking place. And because there's an income cap on the prepayments that are going out, that could have caused there to be a limitation when they based it on 2019 incomes. And then when you file 2020, then if your income was a lot lower in 2020 and you don't have that cap anymore, the IRS has basically been sending up what they're calling the plus up payment to shore up that difference. So if there's still people that didn't get the full economic impact payment for especially round 3, and they didn't file their 2020 tax return yet, and there was an income limitation threshold that capped the amount of their economic impact payment, then when you file the 2020, you may still be getting payments for that. It looks like they're still getting out payments with relation to that issue as well. In all, the IRS has made more than 9 million of these supplemental payments this year, worth approximately $18.5 billion. The IRS will continue to disperse economic impact payments on a weekly basis. Ongoing payments will be sent to eligible individuals for whom the IRS previously did not have information to issue payments, but who recently filed a tax return, as well as to people who qualify for, quote, plus up, end quote, payments. So it looks like they're still looking to get those tax returns or the information for people that haven't filed a tax return, hoping to still get more payments out for them. And of course, the plus up people that need to file their 2020 tax returns, which may have gotten a limitation based on the income cap as a result of their 2019 income being higher, may still be out there for the IRS is still working on them or looking for that information. Special reminder for those who don't normally file a tax return: although payments are automatic for most people, the IRS continues to urge people who don't normally file a tax return and haven't received economic impact payments to file a 2020 tax return to get all the benefits they're entitled to under the law, including tax credits such as the 2020 Recovery Rebate Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and the Earned Income Tax Credit. There are links to those 3 credits here. These are the big 3 kind of refundable credits, meaning if your tax liability goes below 0, you still get these kind of benefit programs, which they still call kind of a refund. But if your tax liability is below 0, it's not really a refund at that time. It's more of a benefit program, and you're getting payments for that. So if your income is below a certain threshold, you might be saying, I don't need to file taxes because I don't owe any taxes. So why would I file a tax return if I'm not required to? Because they're using the tax return in order to foster to implement these benefit programs as well. The major 3 being the Recovery Rebate Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and the Earned Income Tax Credit. So it could quite possibly still be worthwhile to file the tax return. And they made the software providers provide free software if their income is below a certain threshold. So to file the 2020 tax return for people whose income is below the threshold should be free to do. So it's worthwhile, you would think, to at least take a look at it. It costs the time to look into it. Filing a 2020 tax return will also assist the IRS in determining whether someone is eligible for monthly advance payments of the 2021 Child Tax Credit, which began earlier this month. So they're really pushing this Child Tax Credit monthly payment thing. That's their new thing. So if someone has a qualifying child, again, a child under 17 generally, then you probably want to file the tax return because that might qualify you for multiple benefits, including possibly the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and obviously you'd still be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit, and the Recovery Rebate Tax Credit if it hasn't been received, which are the stimulus payments. For example, some federal beneficiary recipients may need to file a 2020 tax return even if they don't usually file to provide information the IRS needs to send payments for a qualifying dependent. Eligible individuals in this group should file a 2020 tax return as quickly as possible to be considered for an additional payment for the qualifying dependents. People who don't normally have an obligation to file a tax return and don't receive federal benefits may qualify for these economic impact payments. This includes experiencing homelessness, the rural poor, and other historically underserved groups. Individuals who don't get a first or second round economic impact payment or got less than the full amount may be eligible for the 2020 Recovery Rebate Credit. There's a link to that here, but they'll need to file the 2020 tax return. See the special section on irs.gov claiming the 2020 Recovery Rebate Credit if you aren't required to file a tax return. There's a link to that here. The IRS has provided an online non-filer tool. There's a link to that here to allow individuals who aren't required to file and have not filed a tax return for 2020 to file a simplified return. So this is the one, this non-filer tool, that you could use if you're not required to file a tax return. It should be easier to do than a tax return, although the tax return software itself may be free and most likely is if your income is below a certain threshold, and that will give you more ability to see whether or not you qualify for more benefits, including the earned income tax credit, which if you use the non-filer tool, you may not qualify for, it won't give you access to the earned income tax credit generally, even if you are qualified for it. So I would still think it might be worthwhile to actually file a basic tax return if you can do it for free, although it's a little bit more complex to do so. But if you don't want to do that, or you're working with someone who don't want to do that, then you can give them the basic information with this non-filer tool to get things like the earned income, not the earned income tax credit, the child tax credits, and the stimulus checks possibly. So this simplified tool returns allows eligible individuals to register for advanced child tax credit payments and the third economic impact payment, as well as claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit. Free tax return preparation, there's a link to that here, is also available for qualifying people. The IRS reminds taxpayers that the income levels in this third round of economic impact payments have changed. This means that some people won't be eligible for the third payment even if they received a first or second economic impact payment or claimed a 2020 recovery rebate credit. Payments will begin to be reduced for individuals making $75,000 or above in adjusted gross income, $150,000 for married filing jointly. The payments in at $80,000 for individuals, $160,000 for married filing joint. So people with adjusted gross incomes above these levels are ineligible for a payment. Individuals can check the Get My Payment tool. There's a link to that here on irs.gov to see the payment status of these payments. Additional information on economic impact payments is available on irs.gov, irs.gov, the IRS website. There's also a link to the economic impact payments here, and there'll be a link to this in the description.